Right, hello everybody, and welcome to my webinar, or our webinar today, should I say, which is on tax efficient tips and financial planning for expats in Portugal, which of course is a really hot topic at the moment for a number of reasons, as I'm sure why a lot of you are here, particularly with regards to NHR, which we will come on to. My name's Sam Daines. I'm one of the senior wealth managers here at Holborn Assets. And before I go any further, I will just introduce Marianne and Wayne, who are from Evelyn Partners, who are our US experts, who will be talking a little bit later on in the presentation. And what I will do is go through a little bit about the general information in Portugal, some other bits, and then we'll pass over to Marianne, who will give us some more information on US connected clients, which I know there are a lot watching this. So we will go back to you, Marianne and Wayne. But for now, what I will suggest, can everybody make a note of my telephone number there at the bottom? I'm also on WhatsApp and my email address, because I know inevitably watching this, there will be a lot of questions, and you might want to have a one-on-one appointment, which we do offer free consultations. So please email me. It'll probably be my assistant, Zoe, that will pick it up, and she will contact you and we can get you booked in. So make a note of that as well. I've also got a YouTube channel. I've put some information at the bottom. There are other videos that I've done on Portugal, also some on Spain as well, and particularly with regards to the Portugal Golden Visa, which you might find interesting. So if you Google my name and financial services in there, you will find the YouTube, plus there are various other social media platforms there that you will find me on. So as I say, what we'll talk about today is Portugal generally with regards to financial planning. And anybody that watched my last presentation, which was about a month ago today, would have realized that a couple of days before I did the presentation, the Prime Minister, Antonio Costa, basically announced that NHR will be withdrawn, which was a real out of the blue announcement, although there had been murmurings of it over the last year or two. And this basically follows on from the withdrawal of the Golden Visa for property in Portugal, which has actually ended just a matter of weeks ago, although it's the announcement that it was ending was more like a year ago. And for anybody that's not aware, it was a very popular way of getting residency and ultimately citizenship in Portugal, because the Portuguese Golden Visa program allowed you to invest as little as 280,000 into property, and in return for that, you could get residency and ultimately citizenship in Portugal. That was withdrawn, and it's now been increased to 500,000. I will say at this point, have a look at one of my other videos on the Portugal Golden Visa, because we've now introduced a new way of getting the Portugal Golden Visa that does include property, and it is less than 500,000. So anybody still looking at that option, have a look at my video there. But let's move on from that. In terms of let's give you some breaking news like we did last time. We have some breaking news, and I will talk about that in my next slide. Some of you might know what that is. It happened yesterday, but it will inevitably affect people who have NHR or are looking to take NHR, should I say. So as I say, make a note of my contact details. We can do free financial reviews and free consultations, particularly for people who are looking to move sooner rather than later, or who are already in Portugal, because we have got a vast amount of people who are interested in sort of talking and finding out their financial situation. Right, so with no further ado, I'm not going to start with the agenda. I'm actually going to start with what the breaking news was. So if you don't know, as of yesterday, the Portuguese Prime Minister, Antonio Costa, resigned his position. And that was after police raided his official residence as part of a corruption investigation. So it's exciting stuff, not for him, obviously, but it's exciting stuff really for the news. It's been all over the front pages in Portugal. So basically, the police searched his official residence and detained his chief of staff, Vitor Iscaria. So he's actually, Antonio Costa has been the prime minister since 2015, and he's the one really that instigated the withdrawal of the Golden Visa scheme for property, and obviously now has announced the NHR more recently would be withdrawn. The investigation itself, by the way, is linked to lithium exploration schemes and a green hydrogen project. I'll send out some information for anybody who is on the mailing list, but obviously email me if you want to be part of that mailing list as well. But the main question everybody will be asking is how this will affect NHR. Because NHR is such an important part of why people move to Portugal or want to move to Portugal, because it is such a fantastic scheme. And for people who don't know what NHR stands for, that's non-habitual residency, and it's a type of taxation you get when you come to Portugal if you fulfil certain criteria. So we'll talk a little bit more about whether this will affect NHR under my NHR section. And what we know so far. It's only happened yesterday. I'd say it's good news for the majority of people, but we'll talk through that a little bit later. So the agenda today, I'll give you an introduction to Holborn, just a little bit about who we are, what we do, and how we can fit in with helping you and giving you advice. A little bit about living in Portugal, so why Portugal? Obviously, we know what a beautiful place it is, but really what you need to consider. I'll do this section a little bit quicker because of obviously the changes to NHR, making sure we've got time to go through that. But it's just a few little bits of information on understanding the taxes, the pensions, budgeting, that sort of thing, a few hints and tips. Then we'll talk about NHR. So basically, what do we expect is going to happen following this announcement? And what is NHR? What benefits does it give you? Because it does give you a lot. I think one study, I think 65% of people said that they would consider not going to Portugal if it didn't have NHR. So it's a real big reason for people to move there. And then we're going to bring Marianne in to talk a little bit about our investment services for US connected clients. As I'm sure, and I know there's a lot of US connected clients who have tuned in for the webinar. It's a lot more difficult for US connected clients when moving to Portugal. There's a lot more considerations to have, and it's hard to get good quality advice, which is why we've partnered with Evelyn to provide that for our clients there. And Marianne will tell you a little bit more about what we do. And then we've got a question and answer session as well with the guest speakers there. There's some questions I know that have already been given to us. We're trying to go through those. Do bear in mind, obviously, people have very individual circumstances. So, on a one-to-one basis may be a better way of addressing some of the points, but we'll get through what we can as well. So that's what we'll go through today. So what I'll start by doing is telling you a little bit about Holborn. So if you don't know about Holborn Assets, about us, that we were established about 25 years ago in 1998. So yeah, a long time ago now. We're a British family firm. So we started out in the UK. We've got over 500 employees now, scattered around the world, and we work from around 20 international offices, and that includes Portugal, which is in the Algarve, and Spain as well. We've got an office over in Spain as well. So there are with over 20 international offices now. The reason we've got these offices is that we can continue to provide financial advice if people move around. Because as we all know, in this world as it is now, people don't stay in one place. So whether somebody's moving to Portugal now, you might ultimately move somewhere else in the world. And by having the appropriate regulation, we can actually continue to offer you advice. We are fully regulated wherever we provide advice. So, for example, in the UK, that's the FCA. We've got our MiFID license in the EU as well. So we can act as your advisor wherever you move, not just now, but into the future as well. And we've got over 20,000 clients now. I think we're up to around 25,000 clients. So we've got a big client base that we look after, and clients that have been with us a long time. And we look after over 2.5 billion in assets under management. So it's a large amount of money that we look after. And we've won multi-industry awards. So there's been more this year. We've got some at the bottom there, the International Investment Awards, which is a bit like the Oscars for the financial services industry. It's probably not quite as interesting or as exciting, but it is. And we've won numerous awards with regards to the investments. And we've also, and I'd say more importantly, we have an excellent reputation on Trustpilot. It's very important what we're thought of in the industry, but it's our clients that really matter. So we've got a very good reputation there. So hopefully that gives you some reassurance in terms of who you're dealing with us. So finally, I'll tell you a little bit about me very quickly. I've worked in financial services for around 25 years now. In the UK, I work for HSBC, Nationwide Building Society, Wesleyan Assurance. So these are all big organizations in the UK, and I provide financial advice on everything from investments, pensions, insurance, mortgages over that time. And around 6 years ago, I made the move essentially to move over here, and I work between our Spanish office and our Portuguese office. I got my qualifications in the UK, qualified to level 4, and that allows me to give the financial advice offshore. So I moved between Spain and Portugal, and our Portugal office, as I say, is in the Algarve. Our Spanish office is in the Malaga region, so it's about a 4.5 hour drive between offices via Seville. So it's a lovely journey. It's nice to see the two countries and the differences, and it's I can see why people here would want to come to Portugal. So let's talk a little bit about what to consider when moving to Portugal. So we'll go through this. There's only a few points to this, but it's some obvious points. But I think people need to be aware of this. And the first one is a very obvious one: is registering under NHR. Do I register and when? Well, obviously, up until recently, well, like I say, recently, up until yesterday, obviously, we believed NHR was going, and we'll come on to that. But NHR is such a good scheme, and it's very rare for it not to be in your benefit to register under NHR. And as I say, it's a reason a lot of people move. As I say, we thought it may be being withdrawn, which I'll come on to. But really looking to that, whether you're moving to Portugal or whether you're already here, if you've not registered, you need to look into that in a lot more detail. Now, I will say at this point, we're not specifically tax advisors, but I will go through some of the benefits of NHR and how that, what benefits that would give you when you're living in Portugal. The next one is to understand the difference in taxation and what makes you tax resident. So it's a bit of an obvious one, this, but I think it's really important. There's different types of statuses that you were here, such as tax residency, your domiciled status, and they all mean very different things. I think the thing to keep in your mind is if you stay anywhere over 183 days in a year, you're likely to be tax resident in that country, and you would need to file your taxes in that country. So bear that in mind. You still can have a residency card, say, for another country, but that's really where you'd pay your taxes. And I will say at this point, I'm sure Marianne would agree, if you have a US connection, it's slightly different in terms of what your reporting is to the US, and you will have an obligation there. So bear that in mind. Is that right, Marianne?
That's absolutely right, Sam. And like Sam, unfortunately, I can't give tax advice, but Sam and I have many connections globally, so we can get you the right tax advice, and we can get you that tax advice as soon as possible so that we can plan efficiently for your financial future, wherever it is that you want to move to.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing. At this point, I mean, it's just understanding what, particularly as I say with NHR, why it is so good for you. And I will go through that. So the other thing is your nationality and the impact on your taxes. So as I just sort of said then, it's what is your tax reporting duty and what impact could that have on your investments, as we've just touched upon. And also pensions and investment planning. You need to minimize the taxes on pensions and investments and look at your previous investments that you've already got in place. So, for example, using an example of the UK, if in the UK, if you have ISAs or premium bonds, they're very tax efficient, tax-free in the UK. But when you move away from the UK, they can become fully taxable. So you need to look at where you're going to be, in this case, Portugal, and how you can make them tax efficient in the country that you're moving to. And that's not just the UK, obviously in the USA, in Canada, all around the world, there are particularly tax efficient investment vehicles. But when you move, when you cross borders, that can particularly change. So you need to look at that as well. The other one is budget and preparing a plan. Again, really obvious one, but the amount of people we come across who make mistakes, whereas that they haven't budgeted properly, they haven't put a plan together, it really is important to look at that. Now, there is a tool I mentioned it in my last webinar called numbeo.com. I wasn't aware of it up until relatively recently. It was through a colleague's webinar that he did that I went and looked into it. And essentially, Numbeo is the world's largest cost of living database. So it's a crowdsourced webpage where people put in information about healthcare, utility costs, living expenses, transport costs. and more people put information in. And it's not just for Portugal, it's for anywhere in the world, for different regions. And what that helps you to do is gauge how much money you will need in that particular country. And as we all know, the inflation has been very high recently, and this helps you to really get an up-to-date measure on what the cost of living is. So I do urge you to make a note of that and then go and have a look on numbeo.com, because it is a really useful website. Again, seems pretty obvious, probably a reason a lot of people here is to get help before and after you move. So some of you might already be in Portugal, some of you might be moving to Portugal soon. But you need to look at the importance of financial advisor or a tax advisor or accountants, because although some of these services may cost, ultimately what that will save you by using a qualified professional will way outweigh what it costs you for that service. And I'll give you an example on the next slide of something that we do for our clients. Again, it's not going to be applicable for everyone, and I will say at this point, particularly for US connected people, but it's an example of how doing something very small can make a big difference on the tax you pay. So this is an example of a Portuguese compliant investment. Okay, so basically it's a Portuguese wrapper. So it's a tax efficient unit linked platform that's very popular with expats. So basically you would have your money to invest, you would put it in a Portuguese compliant investment. You can hold it in euros, sterling, US dollars. And the idea of the Portuguese compliant investment is that the longer you hold it for, the more tax efficient it gets. So if you hold a Portuguese compliant wrapper for 5 years or less, the tax you pay is 28% on the withdrawals you make. So it's not taxed when your money's in there, it grows tax free. But when you make a withdrawal, you're taxed at 28% on the growth element. So it's only when you take your money out, it's only on the bit that's the growth element, you're taxed at 28%, which is pretty standard. Obviously different under NHR, but that's the standard rate of tax. However, after 5 years, that 28% rate of tax is reduced by 20%. So you pay 80% of 28%. Sounds confusing, but that's 22.4%. So after 5 years and less than 8 years, you actually only pay 22.4% on your withdrawal, the growth element. And then after 8 years, it drops even further. So it's 40% of 28% you pay. So effectively a 60% reduction. So that's only 11.2%. So it's slightly over 10% you're paying. And where this works so well in financial planning for people who are moving to Portugal, and I will stress again, it's not in everyone's situation. This is just on a very sort of basic scenario, if you like. But that saved you a huge amount of money, and it fits in with NHR. NHR is for 10 years, which we'll come on to. An investment within a wrapper like this will be for 8 years. You'll be getting, very high level of tax benefit, which dovetails perfectly with regards to NHR. So as I say, it's portable. You can move it to other countries. So if you move from Portugal, as I say, we can continue to give you advice, but you can actually bring the product with you. It can become tax efficient in the country you move to. You get all different types of investment strategies as well. It's flexible for income and withdrawals. There's a number of different providers that do these, but it's just an example which we will help our clients source out. But it's just an example of what we do and how we can save our clients money. So what we're going to move on to now is probably the reason a lot of you are here. And that's really with regards to NHR and what is happening. So initially, as I say, just before I did my last presentation, we had the announcement that NHR will be withdrawn. And then about a week later after that announcement, a draft state budget law was published. And it basically said that the end of the NHR regime will be from January the 1st, 2024. And it basically means that if you hadn't acquired your residency in Portugal, or you didn't hold a Portuguese residency permit as of December the 31st, you would no longer be able to have NHR. So they were really trying to move this in very, very quickly. And then they were going to talk about this again at the end of this month. However, this is all not happening, because obviously what has happened is the Portuguese Prime Minister has resigned, which now means, well, what's going to happen with NHR? Because unlike the Portuguese Golden Visa program, that had already gone through. That had gone through all the bits that had to go through in terms of the Parliament and been voted through. This one was very much in early stages with a view to rush it in. So the implications now for NHR are as follows, really. Political analysts are now forecasting that NHR is likely to remain unchanged for the foreseeable. Now, we don't have any dates on this, and we don't know. This is just a little bit of speculation, really, really within a day. But it looks to me that certainly in a foreseeable, NHR is going to be there. Okay. And if I go down to point three, it sort of flows onto this. The reason for this is that when you look at the legislation in Portugal, because the government has essentially collapsed, the proposed state budget, which is where this was announced, is rendered invalid. So effectively, a new government would need to submit a new proposal, and it would have to have a clear majority. So the discussions on this now are not likely to start to at least March next year, and potentially could be May or June next year. So this is just the new discussions. And then, obviously, due to the scandal, I mean, they're calling it a scandal. I wouldn't like to comment on that, but due to the so-called scandal, it looks like a single party majority might be unlikely, which would strengthen the case that NHR will continue for longer. And even, the possibility that it being withdrawn may be dropped by a new administration, because this was very much Antonio Costa's idea. As I say, it followed on from what he was doing with regard to the Portuguese Golden Visa and the effect it was having on the economy. So it could be that a new government coming in will have completely different views. And why this is so important to people, as I say, is that go to point number two there, is as I mentioned earlier, that a recent study suggests that 65% of people would actually reconsider moving to Portugal if NHR was removed. And I know I've spoken to a lot of people who have effectively said, well, I might not go to Portugal now because of being removed. But now we've got another window of opportunity. So for people looking to move to Portugal, it looks like you're going to have longer. And what I will say at this point, do contact me, give me your details, because I can keep you updated with newsletters. As I say, on my YouTube channel, I will continue to do videos to keep you updated with the information. But this is as we understand it at the moment. So it's a really big announcement, and I'd argue a really good announcement for a lot of people who are watching this. And I'll put all about NHR. As I said, we're not tax advisors, and I keep saying that because I know people have very individual questions on tax, but I just want to go through a brief overview with regards to this. NHR was introduced in 2009, and it was supposed to attract high-value talent and wealth into Portugal, which it succeeded in doing. I know a number of people that have moved from Spain to Portugal because of the tax system. But inevitably, obviously, that can actually have an economical effect on things such as house prices and just general economic factors. And this is part of the reason why, similar to the Portugal Golden Visa, while something like this could be withdrawn. But it certainly has brought in a lot of money, a lot of wealth into Portugal. NHR is a benefit that you get for 10 years. So you apply for NHR, you get NHR, you've got it for 10 years. As I said, it works perfectly with other types of schemes they have with a Portugal compliant wrapper, but it is there for 10 years, so it's a good amount of time. And essentially, you've got your personal income tax at a flat rate of 20%, where normally it can be anywhere between 15 and 48%. Again, this is just general information, but you can see how that can significantly save people money, particularly for people who are high earners, which is what makes a lot of people go to Portugal. And on your global income, you don't pay any tax on dividends, interest, royalties, capital gains, rental income from outside Portugal, and income from employment in another country. And these will be paid at source. So that can be normally between 28 or 48%. Again, this is very generic information, but just sort of giving you an indication of the benefits that are there. And again, on your pension income, if it's taxed in Portugal, be taxed on a flat rate of 10%. Which includes retirement savings and insurances. So these can normally be up to 48%. So you can see the people retiring for high earners, Portugal is a particularly popular place. And also there's not inheritance tax or wealth tax in Portugal under the NHR scheme. Now this may be tweaked and changed next year. NHR may still go, but as you can see, just as a general overview, these are huge benefits that people have. And in terms of how to qualify for NHR and what you need to do and how it would work, essentially to qualify, you can't have been taxed in Portugal for the last 5 years before application. So that stops you kind of going into Portugal, benefiting from it, leaving, then coming back again. It's designed to make sure these are attracting new people, new wealth into the country. Now, to get NHR, you have to request a tax residence certificate, which means be a tax resident, as we touched on before, you'd have to live in Portugal for more than 183 days. It doesn't need to be consecutive, but that would be within the tax year, and that will allow you to get your tax residence certificate. If you haven't done that, you can look at actually buying a property in Portugal during those 12 months, and that could also qualify you subject to certain rules as well, which we can sort of talk about more individually in your personal circumstance. Or you must have the right to be in Portugal through a long-term residency, such as a golden visa. And as I say, have a look at the YouTube channel on the golden visa in Portugal, where we talk a bit about that. Your D7 visa or the D2 visa. That's kind of the general criteria for NHR. But anybody thinking of moving to Portugal now, give this some serious thought, because this has been delayed, and as I say, we will keep you updated. But it's very clear, if you look at all the facts, this will be delayed. So it gives people a window of opportunity to do this now. So give this some thought. At this point, I'm going to hand you over to Marianne, who, as I say, specializes with our US clients, and Marianne will tell you a little bit about who Evelyn are and what they do in partnership with us here at Holborn Assets. A little bit about who is a US connected person, the reporting obligations, what of these are not filed, and just general services that Evelyn provide. And then we can move on to some of the questions that we've had in, and we can try to answer them as best we can. Is that okay, Marianne?
That's great. Thank you, Sam. It was really useful, especially with the explanation of the NHR and the scandal, or so-called scandal, that's going on in Portugal at the moment. It's very informative. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time, and I do appreciate that. It's really close to dinner time now, and you probably just want me to hurry up so you can enjoy the rest of your evening. So I'll be as brief and as informative as possible. Similar to what Sam said earlier, I'm not a tax advisor. I am an investment director. I have worked in financial services for about 20 years now, dealing with US clients for the past 10 years, which is how I came to meet Wayne that's on the call. Wayne's more interested in Portugal at the moment, so he's just, like you guys, listening to the benefits of moving to Portugal because he's a keen golf player. Wayne and I have worked together for 10 years. That's how I became involved in the US clients. And I love it. I love dealing with US connected clients purely because there is such a mix of ideas and the rules and regulations. So you're different to the rest of the world. Apart from Eritrea and North Korea, there's no other countries globally that have worldwide taxation like a US person does. That brings me quite swiftly on to US connected person. So how do you know if you're a US connected person? Well, the obvious is, do you have a passport? Were you born in the States? But there's lots of other nuances that we can go through with you, because we come across people on a daily basis that actually don't realise they still have a US tax obligation. And from a financial perspective, they are classed as a US connected person. For example, your green card can expire for immigration, doesn't necessarily expire for taxation. There's different rules around it, and we can help you with that. We have tax partners that we work with globally. So in terms of looking after your affairs, we work with Sam and his team on a planning perspective. We work with tax partners in the US, in the UK, throughout Europe, and each of them have different specialities. So, for example, if you're moving from Portugal to the States, you'd need a tax advisor or a group of tax advisors that can work together to ensure that when you move, or if you're already there, that everything's in order, so you don't get in trouble with the IRS, or you don't get in trouble with the Portuguese tax authorities. Our job is to make your life easier and look after your wealth for you. You will be aware that regardless of where you live and regardless of whether you have to pay tax or not, if you are classed as a US connected person, you are required to file tax returns in the States. I look after investments that are compliant regardless of where you're resident. So in terms of what we do, we run portfolios that are portable. So they work for your US taxation and they work for the taxation regardless of your country of residency. We're able to look after US products, 401k rollovers into IRAs, SEP IRAs, Roth IRAs, any US product that you have in the States, we're able to help and look after. And we have US custodians, so the tax reporting works. It's a 1099 tax report produced by a US custodian, so it's all simple from the US filing perspective. And then we can produce a tax report based on the tax year of your country of residency. That sounds like a really simple thing, but actually having a 1099 report that works is really beneficial when you're leaving the States. In terms of how we look after your investments, we run straightforward portfolios that are a mix of equities, direct investments into stocks and shares, fixed income such as US Treasury bills, and alternative assets such as some mutual funds that are available outside of the States. A problem you may encounter is if you have an investment portfolio with a broker in the States, generally we see those brokers exiting their non-US resident clients, and there's very little expertise within the UK or Europe that's able to pick up those portfolios and run them efficiently for you within the right taxation wrappers to take on the US products, such as your pension portfolio, so your retirement accounts. We're able to do that for you. So if you are in that position at the moment, even if you keep an address in the States, the bigger financial firms like Charles Schwab and Merrill Lynch, Fidelity, they're all looking into that and actually exiting their non-US resident clients. So you guys are in a little bit of a catch-22 situation, because where you're at, it's hard to find somebody in Europe that's able to help you, and then it's hard to find somebody in the US who will want to help you because you're no longer a US resident. And that's really where we fit in, and that's where we're able to help you. Sorry, I feel like I'm just speaking at you, especially because I can't see anybody. It's quite hard, this one. But please let me know if you have any questions. That's a real whirlwind snapshot of who we are, how we can help. My main takeaway for you would really be, you have Sam's contact email and telephone number. If you do have anything that you want to discuss, any planning requirements, any financial requirements, and you're coming from the States or you've previously had US citizenship, or you feel that you may come under that US umbrella, get in touch with Sam. We can arrange a three-way call. We can bring in tax advisors if we need to, and we can help you. It's such a wide variety of clients that we see. All I know is we will be able to help you and point you in the right direction and give you advice that works for you.
And it's brilliant, Marianne, and that's the thing. We have so many people that come to us who have a US connection and who have not been able to find anybody who can help them when they move outside of the US. And obviously I said there's not many people out there that do that, so we can certainly help. And everybody's situation is so individual. As I say, we've got some questions here and I'll go through them. There is a lot of questions on NHR, so we have to be careful what we can say and what we can't say, and when it becomes under tax advice. But if I go through them, we'll answer as best we can. There's some that I think I can answer, some that Marianne can answer, but I can see a lot of NHR written on here. We'll see what it says on here. So I think the first question that came in, which I think was more one I can answer, is there a possibility that NHR will be expanded beyond the 10 years, or is it set? Tax rates in Portugal for higher income earners is fairly outrageous. How do people manage this? Well, actually, it's very true. This is why NHR is such a good scheme, because as we sort of said on the presentation, these rates can be up to what, 48% for people, and that is a lot. And obviously, even people living in Portugal after 10 years will ultimately go on to this. In terms of is it set? Yes, it is set. It's unlikely that it's going to change for the 10 years. And the only way that would happen, I suppose, is that if a new government came in and said, OK, we're going to expand it to more than 10 years for new people, I think would be incredibly unlikely. Bear in mind, we've just come from the verge of it being withdrawn. I think it probably is not going to go the other way like that. But the key for people like yourself, and again, it depends on your nationality and your individual circumstance in terms of how do people manage this? They manage it by doing things such as I sort of mentioned, I know it's just one strategy, but the Spanish compliant wrappers, things such as that. These are schemes and investments that effectively dovetail in with NHR. And if you use them very cleverly, you can benefit from NHR for the 10 years, and savings and other investments you have, they become tax efficient after a period of time. They can almost take over the role of providing you with that income after a period of time. So that's a way to manage it. But inevitably, your taxes would go up after the 10 years. But again, that comes down to having good quality advice when you speak to people. Right, this is one for you, Marianne. Again, it's mentioned about NHR, but I don't know if there's any comments on this and taxation. But what are Roth account tax strategies with and without NHR? Can you just not withdraw funds from the account to save on tax?
Okay, so from that perspective, it is more of a taxation perspective. We would need to speak to you, find out some more information. Typically, your Roth IRA is taxable in the same way as when you're resident in the States. How that works with the NHR, we would just need to get some tax advice for you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I know so many people have these tax questions, and not all of them are very individual anyway, very individual to yourselves anyway. So we need to look at your own situations. But obviously, so many questions are being raised now because of these changes as well, with and without NHR. We don't actually know specifically what's going to be happening anyway going forward at the moment. So we need to sort of have a look into that.
Absolutely, Sam. So I was just going to add to that. But
yeah.
From a withdrawal perspective, the Roth IRA is quite tax advantageous, so it should work. But you would just need to check with a tax advisor to make sure there's no Portuguese tax applicable and how the NHR impacts that. Apologies.
No, that makes sense. So next question, I think this is for me. How to be eligible for the tax regime. So NHR. So we touched upon this, I think, anyway. So you've got to have the right residency visa. So you need a long-term visa. So say the D2, D7, you can look at the Portugal Golden Visa. As I say, it is something we do here at Holborn. So if you are interested in that and you want to talk a little bit about that, because that's one way of then getting your NHR, then we can look at that for you. But you need to request, once you've got the qualifying part of this, so you've been in Portugal more than 183 days, or you bought a property in the last 12 months, or you have that right residency, then you request that tax residency certificate. As I think we keep saying, and it's the same with regards to this, we have contacts that can help you through the whole process, particularly with the Golden Visa as well, because we can actually help you with many stages of this. So this is what you need to do to be eligible, providing NHR continues, which we will find out more from, but we certainly know it's going to be here, certainly for the foreseeable moving forward. So I see another NHR one here for you, Marianne, but I don't know if we can answer this. NHR, what is the means for a US retiree living on investment income with tax? Oh, what NHR, what does this mean for a US retiree living on investment income with tax residency in Portugal? So it's really how NHR affects US connected people.
Absolutely. So if you are living on investment income, again, it's another question for a tax advisor, because there are nuances and there's been recent updates from the US Portugal tax treaty on this. So we would need to bring in a tax advisor. If you're living on investment income, the income would be treated as income. Now, how that is impacted by the NHR and whether the NHR works with the US tax regime is something you would need to get tax advice on directly.
Okay, we've got questions.
The same for any type of income. So where you're receiving income and you're a US tax filer, you will need tax advice to see the implications of the NHR as to whether it stays in place, the impacts, and whether it's removed, the impacts on your US tax filing and how you pay taxes if they're eligible for it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Someone's asked here, what are the tax benefits for US citizens, or are there any tax benefits for US citizens becoming tax residents in Portugal? Bit of an overlap maybe on these questions.
Yes, so the NHR is obviously relevant for Portuguese residents. We need further clarification on the impact for US connected individuals that are now moving or living in Portugal how that impacts their US taxation. And again, we can bring in the tax advisors to help with that.
Okay. Once it's come in here, can you explain the social security contribution calculation? And is there a ceiling?
Is that for US social security?
Yeah, I don't know actually. We need a little bit more information to answer that as well. Right, okay. Next one here. Okay, this is one for me. What's the new expiration for the NHR, and how do I get benefits if I've just purchased a home? Okay, so we've sort of covered that. So at the moment, it looks like it's going to be expanded. We don't know how long for. Okay, tax implications of US citizens moving to Portugal. Again, that's a tax question. So I don't know if we've covered this. Digital nomad visas and tax relevance to US employer based outside Portugal. Any comments on that, Marianne? But again, it's probably not your
Yeah,
remit.
it's a taxation question, and we have the setup of the NHR in its current format and how that works when you're in Portugal. The bit where we need tax advice is how does that play in with the US tax system?
Yeah.
And I know there's lots of tax questions coming through on this call. Please contact Sam.
Yeah.
We can work with a tax advisor that we know. Generally, we can ask these questions as well without going out and get specific tax advice, which means from your perspective, we can relay tax information without you having a huge tax advisor bill at the end of it for just generic information. So do get in touch with us and we'll be able to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a question here, Marianne, about I'm a US citizen. How do I start to prepare? It's a bit more of a general question. What do I need to know about having Social Security benefits transferred to Portugal? Transferred there. Yeah. Is there any comments on that?
So I have a wide range of clients, and you can't transfer your Social Security benefits as such when it comes to the point as when they're payable as income. That can be paid to a bank account anywhere. So I have clients in the UK and in Europe that are receiving their Social Security payments, but the actual benefit itself cannot be transferred.
Okay, oh, that's really useful to know as well. One for me, I think here, I'd like to know ways to reduce my taxes without the NHR status. Planning to move in 2024. Well, possibly you will be able to get NHR tax status as well. So we need to keep an eye on that. As I said before, anybody who wants to keep updated with what's happening, we're trying to sort of send, or I'm trying to send out a regular newsletter for people to keep them updated on what's happening. And obviously I continue to do videos on a regular basis just to update with any information. So please let me know if you want to keep it, be part of that, and I can obviously keep you updated as well. Right. Okay. So is there anything from your point of view? I'm conscious of time there, Mariana, keeping you. Is there any sort of anything else you want to add? I've got a few other question and answers in here. I'm just seeing which ones we can cover. Otherwise, we might have to take this onto an individual basis.
Just from our perspective, if you haven't already moved to the States, moved from the States, contact us before you do. It's always better to prepare before you move than wait until you're there. And then we can make sure all of your assets are in order. They're movable globally, and we can help you with that. So if you're thinking about moving, if it's in 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years, it's never too early to start planning, and we can help with that. And if you're in the States and the uncertainty of the NHR is something you're wondering now, or actually I want to leave the States, but I'm not sure about Portugal, maybe I'll choose Spain or the UK, get in contact with Sam. We can help, and we can make your investments and your wealth portable globally for you. And we have tax advisors in all jurisdictions that we work closely with, so we can help with pretty much anything you need. Just contact us and we can go through on an individual basis on the best way forward for you, because each person's circumstances are going to be different, and giving generic information is not always the best, because sometimes I feel that you'll end up with an idea that actually doesn't necessarily work for you. So just contact us and we can go through how we can help you.
Yeah, that's it. And it's working with different teams of people to get that advice right. And I know that's the most important thing is you get the right information. And I know that particularly in Spain and in Portugal, that people hear a number of different things about whether it's tax or their finances, and people get very confused and they try to work out what's right. So when we talk to people individually, we're able to really ascertain what their situation is, and we can then give bespoke advice to that person. So as I say, I know someone's put, I've got a couple of people actually to put their email addresses in, which I will make a note of. As I say, use this opportunity now just to make a note of my telephone number there. You can do WhatsApp or probably email is the easiest there at samdanes@holbornassets.com. I can keep you updated with everything that's going on as well, because there's so many changes coming into this. There's a lot of, to say, we've had a lot of questions about NHR, and a lot of the questions we've had in, we can't really answer now because we've been thrown a little bit into the abyss in knowing what's going to happen moving forward. But I certainly think that, something to take out of this is that we do know there is going to now be a longer period of NHR, and as I say, for the majority of people, that is going to be a good thing, and it's going to lower taxes. So people that maybe were shelving or putting on hold, moving to Portugal, I think now is probably a good time to look at that. And as I say, we're here to help. If you are US connected, then we partner there with Marianne. We can give you bespoke advice on your own situation to make sure that we give you the best solution. Keep in contact. As I say, it's free advice that we give. And yeah, we're more than happy to help. Is that right, Marianne? Anything else to say finally before we end?
No, just thank you all for your time. Really appreciate you listening to us. I know it's not always the most riveting of conversations when we're talking about finance and how to plan for the future. It is a worthwhile conversation having, and I'm happy to pick up offline with Sam about any questions you may have or anything you may think of afterwards. We're available to speak to you.
Yeah, that's absolutely a key thing. And if there's anything you want to go back, we will send a copy of the webinar out. I'll also get a copy over to me and I'll put that on my YouTube channel. So have a look at that as well. There's other videos on there so you can rewatch it. And if that raises any other questions, then obviously please let me know. But as I say, thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you found it useful. And thank you, Marianne and Wayne, for joining with us as well. As I say, it's great to work with you, and great to have a solution for US connected clients. And yeah, long may it continue. So thanks very much, everyone. It's a real pleasure to have you. And as I say, we're here at your disposal when you need us. So hopefully you found it useful. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.